of mankind en masse. Her and Sri Ramakrishna's and Swami Vivekananda's teachings are not confined to any psychological or any geographical barriers. It is meant for the whole humankind. And we find that the Holy Mother Sarada Devi continued to represent the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna in her own sweet motherly fashion. And this concept, as has been very rightly and properly mentioned by Swami Atmanandaji, this concept that the advent of Sri Sarada Devi in the scheme of things, in this divine dispensation, has a special quality, and that is to place before the human society the concept of the motherhood of divine, of which we have heard enough in our literatures, in Vedas, Puranas, Tantras, and etc., the concept of the creative capacity of the divine in this universe is very dominant in the thinking of the Indian spiritual sciences. But unfortunately, we do not find a single example where it is demonstrated through a human form, in a human form, and that too in a very normal, acceptable, and not frightening manner. Let me elaborate, my dear friends. When we look at Sri Ramakrishna's life, we are carried away by the height of spiritual ecstasy in which he always lived. He himself said that he was instructed by the Divine Mother that he should remain in Bhav Mukha. That is, he lived in the borderline between the absolute and the phenomenal. Comparing, by comparison always is a very good means of passing away one's ideas to others, conveying one's ideas to others. Say for instance ourselves. We are totally entrenched in the phenomenal world. It is almost beyond our dreams to appreciate or understand the spiritual ecstasy and the excellence of Sri Ramakrishna's being. Now let's look at it by contrast. Sri Ramakrishna was as much entrenched in the spiritual things of the world as we are entrenched in the phenomenal. It was difficult for him to come down to the phenomenal. That is how we should try to understand. It's almost two extreme poles. And he was instructed when he thought that it's no more necessary for him to maintain the body. He was instructed by the Divine Mother of the Universe that tui bhav mukhe thak. You remain in that borderline of the absolute and the phenomena, because he has something to do, which he was not aware then. The charming simplicity of that person. He gradually became aware of his responsibilities and his duties in the hand of the Divine Mother of the Universe. So this concept of Bhavmukh is very well found in his life when we find that he is always deep in spiritual ecstasy. Bhave gargara matwala. That is, he was almost appearing like a person intoxicated, not by alcohol or by any drugs, but intoxicated by the awareness of the Divine Mother of the Universe living in him and through him, and he knew himself to be the dependent child of the Divine Mother of the Universe. So Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual ecstasy, Sri Ramakrishna's way of life, his dancing, his music, his conversation, and everything that you find from the literature that has emanated from those days is almost awe-inspiring. And that awe, that reverence, that respect creates a sense of distinction, a difference, a distance between ourselves and Sri Ramakrishna's life. because we feel absolutely inadequate, absolutely incapable of what to speak of fathoming. Even to explain and understand it becomes very difficult for us when he is in that state of life. In Narendranath, what do we find? In Swami Vivekananda, we find that here's a man of my liking. Here's a human being, full of courage, full of determination, full of dynamism, full of character, compassion, wisdom, all that goes to make a human being an acceptable ideal of the human society. Though, in essence and in principle, he was no different from Sri Ramakrishna. He was a Sri Ramakrishna in a different form. Or, to be more precise and correct, instead of confusing you, the same divine personality whose advent was necessitated because of the demands of the time, that same spiritual personality had to have 3 different containers, 3 different vehicles, 3 different forms, so that in 3 different aspects they could encompass the needs and requirement of the whole human society. So we can understand Narendranath's philosophy or his life or his teachings or his ideals because he speaks to us in a language which is very easily understandable and very close to our heart, and he calls us in the language to which we respond immediately. The third vehicle, the Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi, is totally different from the manifestation of the spiritual strength, power and wisdom that we find in Sri Ramakrishna. And, excuse me, I'll quote an example, a parable from Sri Ramakrishna himself. Sri Ramakrishna once said that if a person is a very, very deep or both extensive and intensive adhar, a receptacle, a receiver of divine grace and wisdom, he can absorb and hold his balance without being known or understood or being exposed to people. He can hold that much of spiritual wisdom, spiritual grace, spiritual knowledge, spiritual experience to a great extent because he's a very wide container. But a small container, if you put in something in it more than it can contain, it spills over and makes a mess of everything. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, by way of an example, a parable, that if it is a huge, massive lake, and if a group of elephants will come and bathe and conceal themselves underwater, nobody would ever know. But if it is a very little pond, and if something goes in, an elephant goes in, firstly it won't be able to go in, and the whole water will spill over the bank, and the whole area will be spoilt and soiled. That's how Sri Ramakrishna used to say. It is not a total comparison, my dear friends, but just a suggestion. Sri Ramakrishna expressed and manifested his spiritual ecstasy for a particular purpose, to convince people that the spiritual wisdom is true, is achievable, is experienceable, and it changes and transforms the human personality totally. And to convince people, we find in him that glorious, majestic spiritual ecstasy which he continuously manifested in himself. It was necessary to manifest for the betterment of human society, not that he could not contain it. Though we don't see any other example in human society who has contained it so well, so long, and demonstrated it and manifested it so excellently and so precisely and correctly. The Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi did have that capacity to hold and to bear and to absorb the fullest extent of spiritual wisdom. But being Adya Shakti herself, Parama Prakriti herself, being the Divine Mother of the universe herself, she knew how to hold that strength within herself, and the only manifestation was the motherliness of the Holy Mother, Mother of the whole universe. So as the advent of Sri Ramakrishna was necessary to manifest the collected or collective spiritual wisdom of the whole Indian nation, the Bharatiya Sanskriti, the Bharatiya Adhyatma Sanskriti, as it was necessary to manifest those ideas in a concrete, tangible form, in the human form of Sri Ramakrishna, it was also necessary for the human society to see a bright, brilliant human personality in whom the concept of the universal motherhood is totally and completely manifest. And as there should not be and could not be any awe and distance between the mother and the son, the Holy Mother lived a life of a normal human being. The supernaturality or the so-called abnormality is her absolute normalcy. In her, we find nothing which will create a reverence and an awe by means of which we have a feeling of separateness from her, a distance from her. That is the special aspect of the personality of the Holy Mother, the Mother of the whole universe. And that has been the main theme of the Mother's life since she was forced to take up the role that Sri Ramakrishna earmarked for her. And Sri Ramakrishna did not spare her. Not only did not spare her, if you allow us to say it so with the great closeness or nearness, we, at least I personally feel, it was very unfair on the Holy Mother to be left behind for 34 long years. But then, the Shakti which made Sri Ramakrishna behave the way he behaved, the Holy Mother, Sarada Devi, was that Shakti herself. So she doesn't need any other support. She is absolutely on her own. Swe mahimne pratishtita. She resides, she lives in her own glory. And that glory is the motherhood of the divine, contained in a normal and natural, acceptable human form, the form of a mother. But, as you would know, that one cannot totally conceal fire by ashes. The fire once in a while shows off itself. Similarly, you had heard several instances from Swami Atmanandaji and Professor Patel from Indira Pen as to how the Holy Mother occasionally, in spite of her best efforts, got caught as the Divine Mother of the universe. And I would just express one incident, mention one incident, absolutely sweet and absolutely saturated in motherly compassion. One gentleman far away from the northeastern parts of India, Assam area, I would not know the specific place from where he came, he had been imagining that if Sri Ramakrishna is Bhagavan Swayam, manifestation of the divine, and the Holy Mother Sarada Devi is Bhagavati, Rajarani, Rajarajeshwari, And he was, in his own imagination, totally convinced that the Holy Mother must be sitting on a priceless stone, surrounded by our Ashtashakhis, and would be visible to us in the form of the Rajeshwari Mata of the whole universe. With this preconceived idea, he comes down all the way to Jairamati. And at that time, the Holy Mother, in her half-dirty clothes, a white piece of linen with which she used to wrap herself very carefully, at that time when that gentleman arrived at her door, she was sweeping the floor. She was to some extent incapacitated by gout and rheumatism, so she was not so graceful in her movements. Her clothing were not so bright and brilliant, just like a mother of the house busy in her household duties. And the gentleman came and asked of the Holy Mother herself, "Is this the place where the Holy Mother lives?" So she, in her usual compassionate tone, said, "Yes, my dear, Baba. Yes, my dear child. Would you kindly inform her I would like to see her?" So she leaves the broom there, wipes her hand, and she says, "Well, I am the mother." It was such a disillusion for that devoted soul. Spontaneously, without knowing what he is saying, he says, "Oh, what is it?" The Ghor Maya. He is disillusioned. The Divine Mother of the universe, in a half-dirty cloth, sweeping the floor of a mud hut. What a fall from his imaginations. He says, "Oh, Ghor Maya." And the mother, in her utter sweetness, says, "Yes, my dear child, I am Mahamaya." He says, because the mother's affectionate instinct for a child who has a misconception of her glory, that mother's instinct of compassion forced her to unfold her face for a while and committed herself that, "Yes, my dear child, I am Mahamaya." And she accepted that person as her own child. And by her compassion and her affection, just as a mother would do, immediately made it totally understood to that person who had a preconceived notion of his own thoughts and thinking of what the Divine Mother of the universe should be. And the mother explained to her in her compassion what not her Divine Mother could be. She could be anything that she prefers to. That is how the Divine Mother of the universe lived a life in this world of ours, whereby her ever-flowing affection for each and every manifest object of this universe. Swami Atmanandaji just now said that even a broomstick had its due share of respect and reverence from the Holy Mother. Why not? It is she who has manifested there also. Swami Jnananandaji, her own spiritual disciple, was very close to her. But Swami Jnananandaji, occasionally, when things did not go his own way, he used to lose his temper. Very human. The mother used to occasionally point it out to him. Jnananandaji, I have seen the Swami, he is no more now, and I have heard it from him. And the mother used to pull him up occasionally in her sweet way. Gyan, you should not be so angry. You should not lose control on yourself. She used to continue to say as an indulgent mother, and Jnananandaji used to live the way he wanted to, under the protection of the indulgent mother. So one day what happened, in the mother's house, as it is in the villages and also in urban areas, there was a cat, a domesticated, favored cat. And you know, the cats have always the habit of stealing and eating and finding their way into the kitchen. One day, the cat had probably lapped off some milk or some food, I'm not very sure. But the fact is, the cat, according to his own habit, did something. And Gyananandaji came to know about it. And he went into a temper, most probably it was mother's milk meant for the mother, which was lapped up by the cat. And Gyananandaji went to kick at that cat in great annoyance and anger. And that very moment, the mother says, "What are you doing, Gyan? Don't you know I reside in that cat? I am in that cat. I reside in that cat." And with the authority of being the Divine Mother of the universe, the word pierced through Gyananandaji. And he could not put his foot down. It crept there. The kick was not delivered, could not be. So, in this aspect you will find her motherliness, her naturalness, her total devoidance of, total absence of such spiritual manifestations which might create an awe and a respect which in result will create a sense of distance between me and her, was totally not found in her. So, think of the container that she was, that she could swallow her own qualities of the divine universe of the mother, and in return she manifested that motherhood beyond all concepts of boundaries or limitations or different parameters. She was the existing concept of the motherhood manifest in a woman's form in this world of ours, which had never seen such an example before. Her biography is replete with such incidents. And the highlight of it is that Sri Ramakrishna's life is open to a tremendous amount of intellectual debate and intellectual discussions and analysis, trying to conform the teachings of the Vedas and Upanishads as expressed in Sri Ramakrishna's life and as found in his teachings. In the Holy Mother's life, we find no such excellence, though Narendranath and all the children of Sri Ramakrishna, even when they were the masters of this movement known as the Ramakrishna movement, they had to fall back upon for guidance and for instructions and also for spiritual succor, for spiritual strength and courage. But in the mother's life, we never find any such characteristic by means of which a sense of distance, a sense of reverential distance could ever occur in our mind. And that naturalness of the Holy Mother is the most unnatural thing that we find in her life. If we are to look out for something ecstatic in comparison to Sri Ramakrishna's ecstatic life, then this is the excellence of the Divine Mother. Being the Divine Mother of the universe, she lived such a humble, modest, so-called lowliest of the lowly life, and migrating from the level of a common lady for a common purpose, she could raise herself to the level of guiding and instructing the stalwarts like Vivekananda, Brahmananda and others. So, my dear friends, this aspect of the Holy Mother as a silent propagator of Sri Ramakrishna's life or his teachings has some separate, I would say, spiritual basis, which is the last idea that I am to put across to you. You know, propagations are possible in various ways. In the Dakshinamurti Stotram of Shankaracharya we find that Mauna Shishya, Vidya Shishya Guru Juva, Maunastu Guru Vyakhyanam, Shishyastu Chinna Sansaya. That is, we find Shankara says that the Guru is Juva and the Shishya is Prouda. That is, buffeted by the world, and in the course of time, Kala, age has set in, death is staring at face, whereas the Guru has gone beyond the concept and control of time, Kala Atita. So he is eternally young. But he does not speak. And this Shishya who stays in front of him, all his sansaya, all his sandeha is wiped out forever. What does it matter? What does it mean? How does it happen? That is, the person who's known as Dakshinamurti Guru, he has gone beyond the problems of life and living and the world. And because of his wisdom, he emanates that peace and truth around him, which overpowers the mind of the questioner. This is the understanding. Sarada Devi, the Holy Mother, though in form and name and her day-to-day practices of life, she was a different person from that point of view. But inwardly and spiritually, she was absolutely unseparated from Sri Ramakrishna. The same personality in a different container. When we look at the container, we see the difference. When we look at the personality, she is Sri Ramakrishna himself. And I'll give you a very sweet little incident before we close. Swami Virajananda ji, the 6th president of the Ramakrishna mission, was a disciple of the Holy Mother. And he was the first person to come immediately after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away and after the chosen direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. So he was almost close to them, at par with them. His only lamentation on life was, regret in life was, that I was old enough, I was grown on enough, he was in touch with Narendranath's family and all that. How is it that I could never see Sri Ramakrishna in physical form? He could never excuse himself, and that was his continuing regret. And as a very young boy, when he went to the Holy Mother, he did express himself to the Holy Mother that, Ma, I have a great regret in my life. I have never seen Sri Ramakrishna. How I wish I could have seen him. The mother was doing something and her back was turned to Virajananda ji, Kalikrishna Maharaj. And Virajananda was talking to her from behind. So once he first said, the mother didn't reply. He thought that mother might not have listened. He said so again, Mother, what a pity I could not see Sri Ramakrishna, whom I could have seen, because of age and situation and all that. The mother said in a very compassionate manner, how does it matter, my dear child? How does it matter? Didn't satisfy Kalikrishna Maharaj, Virajananda ji. He uttered the same lamentation for the 3rd time. Immediately, the mother turns over, removes her ghungat, looks squarely at Virajananda and said, Look, you are seeing him. Tumi to take dekhcho baba. Dekhcho, present continuing tense. Dekhcho is a present continuing tense. Tumi to take dekhcho baba. So long she was turning her back. And when she could realize that the real sincere agony of this child of hers, who's complaining about his fate, that I have not been able to see him, she turned full square, removed her headdress, removed her gungat, looked squarely at him and said, "Why, you are seeing him, my dear child." So, the propagation of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna is by being Sri Ramakrishna herself for a different purpose in a different form. So it is Sri Ramakrishna who propagated himself in the form of Sri Ramakrishna as much as in the form of Sarada Devi and in the form of Swami Vivekananda. Thank you, my dear friends. Thank you.